All right, guys. Well, I have a very special guest for you today. If you've listened to my show for any length of time, you are familiar with this person. She is a health freedom attorney, a vaccine rights advocate, and also my beautiful wife. She's an attorney by trade, and she fights for our health freedoms day in and day out. And the issue that we talk about today is bigger than the childhood vaccine schedule, which we've spent decades lifting the veil on that. We're going to get right into the greatest risk and greatest threat to your health. Let's get into it with Leah Wilson. There's a massive privacy issue happening right now, and that issue is the push to collect your child's DNA at birth, put it into a national centralized database, and use that information to track your child. Can be used to force medical intervention and then create the ultimate biosurveillance system, which will be tied to your health passport. So make no mistake, this will be the greatest threat to your privacy and your God-given rights if we don't stop this.
So what we're talking about today sounds a little bit dystopian, is whole genome sequencing becoming a part of newborn screening. And the reason why we find it so important to talk about it is because there's something that we can do at this point in time. So let's talk about what that is and why you should be concerned. And I mean, we were on a radio show last week, Nick and I were, and one of the commercials was a pro-freedom job board. And the commercial was mocking the absurd reasons to hire a candidate. And so you heard a little child's voice. And one of the lines was, "When I grow up, I want to get promotions based on my chromosomes." And whoever that wrote this satire really understands the essence of what it looks like to give up our genomic privacy. They understand what it looks like to unwittingly agree to build a database with every American's genetic information. I mean, just for context, so you might not, the word newborn screening might not resonate with you. It might jog your memory if I tell you it's a heel prick that is performed to collect a few drops of blood and put it on a special card that's sent to the public health lab. And the reason a lot of moms don't know it happens is because it's automatic. It's required across the 50 states, and it doesn't require consent. So if there is a consent form signed, it's for the data use, not to do the newborn screen.
Yeah, historically, this test was meant to screen for a small number of metabolic disorders, conditions that were present in the blood, and early intervention was going to make a big difference. That's what we all understood as the quote-unquote newborn screening, but that's changing. What's now being piloted and rolled out, unless we stop this, is called whole genome sequencing. And it's looking at the complete DNA reading of your genetic information at a single snapshot in time without any clinical need. So instead of testing for a handful of known disorders, Tay-Sachs and Huntington's and others, dwarfism, it reads and records a baby's entire genetic code. Do not be confused with the heel prick and what it once was. It is not that. So instead of testing for just a small number of things, now you have these data points that are vast, that are going to make up the entire DNA, and it's being framed as the next frontier in, quote, personalized medicine. Lee and I always have to decide here if we're going to just have a conversation or have a teaching moment. And friends, this is a teaching moment because when you hear personalized medicine, that term should be like alarms should be going off in all of our heads, because it's being framed as such a good thing. You know, personalized medicine. We all want personalized medicine. Who doesn't want personalized medicine? Who doesn't want more customized approach, especially when you have algorithm-based medicine? But this thing called personalized medicine is I think it's a Trojan horse. It's ushering in what we're talking about today, which is this whole genome sequencing and using your genetics as predictive measures. And also, what it really does is shift the purpose of this newborn sequencing and newborn screening from identifying existing conditions to now predictive analysis for future potential diseases based off of the presence of a gene or a group of genes. And this is dangerous. We're going to tell you why.
First of all, it's as you're describing this, it becomes obvious that it's a massive philosophical and ethical leap to cast this wide of a net to screen a healthy newborn. But also, once the information is collected, it's stored, maybe indefinitely. And from there, it's no longer just about health. It becomes about that data and what that data can be used to do, who controls it, who profits from it, who decides what it means for your life, and who decides what genes will trigger certain medical interventions. And it's sensitive data and it's permanent data. So parents need to be really cautious. And when this goes beyond newborns, adults also, about saying yes to whole genome sequencing within a public health platform, with the potential benefit being so low, and we'll explain why it is so low, and the risks being so high. Yes, it is with privacy. That's one of the biggest risks, but it's also a funnel into biotech to quote unquote fix your genes with very new life altering products. It also completely ignores that genes are the least significant factor in health outcomes. So this being piloted to roll out to every healthy newborn baby, yet the science is one of the shakiest bodies of science, is very concerning to me. And predictive genetic medicine sounds advanced, but it's sold as the way of the future, built on scientific imagination and probabilities, not certain outcomes.
Okay, so let's speak to the person who says, well, I don't have kids. I don't plan on having more kids, or my kids are all grown. And so whole genome sequencing doesn't apply to me. It sounds a lot like what we heard about, like childhood vaccines. I don't have kids. I would have done it differently maybe, but this doesn't apply to me anymore. Sounds a whole lot like that. Maybe speak to that for just a moment, of why this matters for that person who doesn't have kids or doesn't plan on having more kids if they already have them.
I mean, if we're talking about your next decision, then obviously, unapologetically, this applies more to people who are going to be having kids or have kids. However, the issue at large applies to all of us, because just like the childhood schedule did not stay the childhood schedule, it grew into the adult vaccine schedule. And then with COVID, it grew into not only school mandates for kids, but workplace mandates for adults, and even mandates to continue living in your nursing home or to, attend Christmas with your family. I mean, that's the type of mission creep that happens with something that can seem very well-intentioned from the outset. And we can question intentions all we want, but what we're looking at are the facts and the trajectory that has been stated by the programs in place. So it's not just a medical question, it's a moral question.
Yeah, so it's not just moral. Do we want a society where every child enters life pre-labeled by their genes? That's the real question. Because that's the beginning of this whole genetic control that you're talking about. It takes a healthy baby, puts them under a lifelong medical surveillance system based off of probability that they might get sick one day. And then what does that do to a child's future? What does that do? How many children will have their futures limited from day one because they were labeled as fragile because of a presence of a gene that probably won't mean anything, by the way. If you read our book, Reclaim Vitality, we dive deep into this subject of genes are the shakiest body of science, and yet here comes precision medicine, which will determine most therapies, most interventions based off of a gene. And I heard one friend describe this as his two girls growing up as a ticking time bomb because of a genetic prognosis at birth. But the girls have both graduated college and are doing awesome. There's just way too many unknowns with genes. And let me give you just one example of this. Epigenetics, so what's above the gene controls the gene, not only just flipping these genes on or off, but also programming the genes to adapt to its environment. The genes are adaptive in nature. It's not stagnant. It's more like a fountain than it is a sculpture. It's constantly changing, constantly pouring into and releasing certain proteins so that it can adapt to its environment. And one gene is going to be expressed wildly different in your body versus somebody else's body. This is the idea of certain genes being expressed differently based off of the individual person. It's called penetrance. This is what geneticists talk about with the idea of just because you have a gene, whether it's MTHFR or whether it's something else, COMT, some of these other genes that are talked about more and more frequently, it's going to be expressed differently in me versus in Leah versus in you listening. And you can't say a population always responds all the time a singular way based off the presence of a gene. Genes are one of the least significant factors in health outcomes.
And that's acknowledged by, so when you're talking about the body of science around genetics, there's a chasm between the two schools of thought. One school of thought looks at epigenetics and acknowledges the complexity, and another school of thought still is looking at a certain gene produces a certain protein, produces a certain outcome. And that has been seen to be very flawed, and scientists have been frustrated by that. So there's this chasm between, but even within both bodies, there's an acknowledgement of the penetrance or the outcomes being wildly uncertain. So whether you're looking at multifactorial with the epigenetic world, or you're looking at DNA equals certain protein equals certain outcome, both worlds know that penetrance, the probability of it happening, is variable and unknown. And even if this disease does manifest or become a reality, that it could be mild, it could be moderate, or it could be severe. So how do you take all of these factors and integrate a process that values genes so heavily into day one of life? I mean, picture a mother sitting holding her baby that, let's be real, a lot of women today are fighting like hell to get pregnant and to carry a baby to a live birth. And so they have this live birth, they have this baby in their arms, and they're told, now, Mom, we can look at your baby's DNA and tell you what could happen in their life, what they could be vulnerable to.
Hey guys, listen, your body is not broken. It's actually brilliant. It's brilliantly designed. And in our new book called Reclaim Vitality, really excited about this. It is a guide to exit conventional medicine, how to live naturally, and how to build vitality from the inside out. It's really reclaimed. It was given to you at birth. And over the past 12 years, I've been teaching these principles inside of my clinic and helping literally tens of thousands of people exit conventional and reclaim their life. Yet, it's always been isolated into my brick and mortar clinic and my workshops. And I'm so excited that we've put all of this information into a guide for you. This is not a self-help book. It's a health freedom manual. We expose what's really keeping you sick and give you the roadmap to rebuild your body from the inside out naturally. You know you've been lied to. You know that you need a new direction. It's time to do something about that. Reclaim vitality, reclaim your life. Pre-order a copy today to be released at the beginning of the year. Amazon has it. Barnes & Noble has it. It's called Reclaim Vitality by Dr. Nick Wilson and Leah Wilson. Reclaim Vitality, a guide to exit conventional medicine and live naturally.
My name is Jason Hayes.
Alyssa Hayes.
My wife had been battling headaches, migraines. I heard Dr. Wilson on the radio. I said, hey, well, I want to give this a shot. Maybe he can help her.
We'd gone to chiropractor before, but never gone into the holistic approach of actual being healthy. Right away, we got pregnant. That was my easiest pregnancy and delivery by far. It was amazing, and it was actually a VBAC, a successful VBAC. As far as the migraines go, I have not had any trouble with that. So that's been a huge relief.
There's definitely been improvements in dietary choices.
We understand more of what it means to truly be healthy, to eat food from God. Our kids are learning, what it means to take care of our bodies because our bodies take care of us.
This is Susan from Dr. Wilson's office. Whether you've been listening to the show for some time or this is your first time, I hope you are enjoying today's show. As you are listening today, if you are personally struggling with something in your health, maybe it's a bad back or headaches or neck pain, shoulder issues, sciatica, or even arthritis, what if you didn't have to struggle anymore? Take the first step to regaining victory in your health. For radio listeners, we have a discounted exam and consultation for just $88 during the show. All you need to do is text in. If we can help you, we will let you know that. If we cannot, we will let you know that too. Simply text in the keyword WIBC to 317-749-0677. Again, that's 317-749-0677. And the word that you will text in is WIBC. This is Susan, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
I want to jump on here before I get back to this conversation with Leah and talk about HSA and FSA accounts. If you don't know what those are, FSA accounts is flexible spending account. HSA is a health savings account. And most people don't know that some of these accounts expire. December 31st, end of the year. If you don't use it, you lose it. If you don't know the specifics about your plan, then you need to look into it. And so if you have one of those accounts, great news. We've set up our clinic now to accept both HSA and FSA. So now you can put those monies to use towards natural health and natural health care. Everything that we do is coded and billable, that it can be turned in and reimbursed with those accounts. So simply get on berestructured.com and click the link there, and you can schedule your first visit, or during this show you can text in to 317-749-0677. That'll get the conversation started, and they will help you, real people by the way, will help you schedule your first visit. 317-749-0677, keyword WIBC. Yeah, but let's address it here. We're talking, we were talking with a well-known radio show, talk radio show host, and she basically said, yeah, but more information is never a bad thing, guys. Wouldn't you want to know if your child is genetically predisposed? Wouldn't you want to know that?
And I'll let you speak to the power of thought. And oh my goodness, I almost feel like a broken record being like, but wait, guys, we're adults and we know the power of thoughts and that we have to see that as a priority. But I'll just touch on the fact that, yes, that's how it's being pitched, is as knowing, as wouldn't you want to know? So that implies knowledge, but that's marketing for biotech to meet a dramatic need. So yes, there's a potential solution, and yes, there's a very dramatic need. So we can acknowledge those two things.
And then biblically, just from this standpoint, the idea of hidden knowledge is root word same as sorcery. And so when there's that hidden secret knowledge, you start getting into some very dark places when you start looking at the roots of pharmakia and how genetic predispositions is being used as a weapon of foretelling.
Come on, we're living through 2025 as a year when people are craving more natural. They're craving less medical intervention, especially from day one of life. And yet we're going to make health this complex. Is this really the solution to quote unquote meet this dramatic suffering that we're living through? The health outcomes are abysmal. We acknowledge that, and that people want solutions. Some people aren't experiencing this. There are homes who are not experiencing the same health outcomes as others, and people are starting to exit those systems that are hurting them. But is it honestly the solution to say that we need to fix your genes? And that's how they're approaching a culture that is ripe for change, as making it this complex and complicated that we need to uncover hidden information so that you can eat, sleep, and breathe and have a long life.
So what we're talking about is genetic predeterminism and genetic determinism, really. And the idea that you are more than your genes. But just if we can talk through this right now, Stand for Health Freedom has a campaign going speaking directly to this. Can you just speak to that, of what that is and why people should care?
Yeah, I mean, the campaign is really built around, okay, so there's something that we can do to take action and expose this. So the Newborn Screening Saves Lives Reauthorization Act. So a lot of things in Congress never move. You know, bills don't move unless it's part of the appropriations or the budget, or if it gets worked into that, or if it's an act that sunsets it's like a must pass thing, like the Farm Bill. So Newborn Screening Saves Lives Act is one of those. It's going to sunset. It needs reauthorized. And newborn screening has been in practice for over 60 years. But in this bill that is in front of Congress now, it funds the genetic database, the national surveillance of genetic data. And it also says that it's funding the tracking of the compliance of what parents do with their genetic screenings. So, I mean, friends, this would take a nuclear bomb to privacy in the U.S. And maybe you don't care about privacy, but do you care about control? Do you care about your parental rights and being the one who decides how to care for the future and the well-being of your child? And other than that, I mean, this informed consent with putting gene sequencing in newborn screening. So am I against gene sequencing? No, it's your choice. It's your choice if you want to gene sequence. But I am against putting it as a part of newborn screening, because putting it there at day one of life would make informed consent impossible, because the mother is not in a position to decide that she wants those genes sequenced when they're telling her, like, we can prepare you for everything your baby might need to know about their health. And the solutions on the other side of that positive test are way too experimental to make a meaningful decision in most situations. So as Stand for Health Freedom, we're saying, click to take action to say, hey, look, Congress, this act includes dangerous infrastructure to build the biosurveillance state.
And gene therapy is a very young body of science. It's a very early part of medicine. You know, 1999, some of the first human trials were being done. I want you to talk to me, about Jesse and why this is relevant now, since Jesse's death happened over 20 years ago.
Yeah, Jesse Gelsinger is a name that I always have to bring up when talking about gene therapy and what do we know about fixing our genes and what do we know about anything with long-term implications. So in 1999, some of the very first human trials were being done as it relates to gene therapy. And Jesse Gelsinger had a mild disorder with breaking down proteins. And this disorder could be more severe, but for him it wasn't. It was managed through diet and taking nitrogen scavengers, which is medication, so that he would excrete urine and not build up ammonia in his body when he ate protein. And he was approached at age, I believe it was 19, saying, Jesse, with your disorder, you're a candidate for this safety trial to know if we can fix your broken gene to save newborn babies. So Jesse, this was not life-saving treatment for Jesse, but he was energized by saving newborns who might have the same gene presentation that he had. And so he signed up, flew from Arizona to Pennsylvania by himself because this was pitched as so safe. And 4 days after the gene transfusion, Jesse passed away. And what happened was the gene therapy community was so stunned and so shaken that it paused human trials for 20 years after Jesse's death. And what you don't realize is that it was weeks before Jesse's dad, weeks after his death, before Jesse's father found out that they weren't informed that the monkeys in these same gene therapy trials had either died or had to be euthanized because of receiving that therapy. And that wasn't disclosed and would have changed their mind. And the community responded. It was a dramatic response, but I guess appropriately, if you look at the surprise from this young man who did not need life-saving treatment passing away unexpectedly. But then you look at fast forward to 2025, this summer, we've had 5 deaths. I think there's 8 deaths total, 5 of them children, and what happened to these trials? Like, why weren't the human trials paused after 5 deaths in one summer, but yet they were after Jesse's death in 1999? And I think one of the major factors is that the COVID mRNA rollout was the global rollout of gene therapy, that none of you are strangers to gene therapy because of COVID.
And they argued this one big time. They pushed back that it's not a gene therapy, that it's a vaccine. And yet the gene therapy community celebrated openly when the FDA authorized the COVID mRNA shot for emergency use. And just listen, mRNA, that is gene language. They celebrated this. It was it was not the vaccine industry necessarily. It was the gene therapy industry. What was it? American Society for Gene and Cell Therapy. They announced it. It was a great day for gene therapy. It was a breakthrough for biotech solutions. All the while, I distinctly remember the public was told the COVID vax isn't going to change your genes. Yet, what do we see with the fallout? It can't even be measured. The fallout can't. Yet, what do we hear anecdotally? And really, there's data on this. People got hurt, and people wish they didn't. People regret the decision. What we know is that there's major infertility that's being attributed to it. We know that there's new turbo cancers that seemingly came out of nowhere that's now being attributed to it. There's neurodegenerative issues that have been attributed to it. And so the reality is that this is a gene therapy, and the whole genome sequencing of newborns is ushering in gene therapies.
And I think one of the people might wonder, like, why was the fallout of the mRNA vaccine, this gene therapy shot, so dramatic compared to regular, quote unquote, regular vaccines? And for vaccines for dummies, I'll just dumb it down. I mean, this isn't like scientifically precise, but vaccines were created to teach your body to respond to a protein, whereas the gene therapy is created for your body to produce a certain protein. So if it's proliferating and never stopping that proliferation, you see these dramatic effects where people are experiencing the rapid production of cancer or the rapid production of blood clots or neurodegenerative disorders. And that's what we don't yet know about attempting to fix someone's genes in this technology and the off-target effects.
I feel like COVID and the mRNA vaccine that got rolled out, if you call it that, the jab that got rolled out, really programmed people to be okay with this. Like it programmed people to, what's it called, priming? Like you prime the pump before you pull the thing for the, like the leaf blower or whatever, or for your lawnmower, like you prime the pump to get it ready to pull the string. I feel like the world got primed to believe that gene therapy is an option, and these things come with a crazy price tag. Maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
Yes, to priming the pump, but I feel like we've done our job in telling the story of the mRNA vaccine being gene therapy, as long as you can connect the dots that you are no stranger to this. The mRNA platform is a gene therapy platform. And so when you hear about the advancements of biotech and the promise of fixing someone's genes, you need to step back and recognize that this is not without risk. And I know that firsthand. So yeah, the price tags are also insane, which brings in just an awareness of what could the ethical implications be, what is there to gain. But when it comes to something like Zolgensma, which is already being offered to newborns who have a positive spinal muscular atrophy screening or test, it's a $2.1 million gene therapy transfusion. One-time transfusion for $2.1 million. And that's covered by Medicare and Medicaid. Obviously, no one else will be able to afford it, but that is just one product that is on the market right now.
Let's talk about biosurveillance, because this is information that can and will be used to build a national genetic system. And that system the threat is it's going to be centralized. So let's talk about biosurveillance and how this can be used.
Well, we already gave you one of the pieces of information with the act in Congress, Newborn Screening Saves Lives Act, that there is evidence that the database will be built. So if you look at what are the opportunities to integrate our biological information into our digital avatars, I mean, we all know that these digital avatars on us exist. Our phones are listening to us. Or if you have Alexa in your home, it's listening to you. Your cars are listening to you. Your Gmail account. I mean, our avatars, digital twins, as some people are now calling it, are robust. And if you connect that with your DNA, which is something that can't be read by your phone, not that I'm aware of. Maybe it can be. Technology's crazy. But if you connect that with your DNA, the sky's the limit for control. And the writing is already on the wall for this national database that does not yet exist. This database doesn't exist. We have time to oppose it. Right now, your public health labs, those pieces of information, like the newborn screening, are kept at the state level. 50 different public health labs. Okay. And yes, how they use that information is in question, but it's not centralized. It's not all connected as America's genomic information, which, come on, let's talk about biosurveillance, safety and security. How can that be weaponized when the database is breached or attacked? So that's one piece of information, is the building of the database. The second piece I want to talk about real quick is China announced that they will win the genomic race. They said 2049, we will have every Chinese national and their genomic information, their DNA reading in a single national database. And who are we as freedom-loving Americans in a constitutional republic to join that race?
I just think about how easily this would be breached. And you might trust the federal government right now with that information, or you don't. Either way, why on earth would we centralize this with this level of information and this personal? I mean, DNA is more personal than a fingerprint. And once that code is uploaded, it can be cross-referenced with medical records, with ancestry databases, with insurance files. Think life insurance right now, social media data. With the rise of AI and predictive analytics, like, it doesn't take much to start connecting these dots and reconnect these anonymous genetic data, because that's what they're saying. It's just all anonymous. Like, it's not linked back to you. Oh, really? You think that's not a leap? Like, you don't have to be a rocket scientist or someone who is big into AI to make that inferential leap that, yes, you could, and it doesn't take much. And I think what's more concerning is, who has access. Under the current frameworks, there's, states own the newborn screening data, like what you said. But the reality is, once somebody gets access to that with, let's say, life insurance, now all of a sudden, you're not able to get life insurance because you have the presence of a gene, or you're not able to be enrolled in the military or Air Force because of whatever, that your outcomes are going to be less than. It reminds me of that movie Gattaca back in the 90s, of like, your future was written at birth, and there's nothing you can do about it.
And in that movie, do you remember the main character says, no stellar test score could overcome my blood test? It was something to that nature, that he would never have the blood test to go along with his test scores, even if he worked his tail off. And I don't even think, I'm going to challenge you on the anonymity thing, because in general, yes, there's always been this, but it's de-identified, it's anonymous, you're protected, we're protecting your privacy with data issues, even in public health. But now with this Newborn Screening Saves Lives Act, it says right there, they're going to track the compliance. They have to know it's Betty Jones that they're following up with to see if her parents took the recommendations. And so, yes, it's 97% certainty back in 2022 to re-identify a record. I think it's 100% now with AI.
Yeah, so the idea, they're not even claiming that it's anonymous, is what you're saying.
Right. No, they're not even promising anonymity, which maybe they will eventually promise anonymity, but how do you then reconcile that with the Newborn Screening Saves Lives Reauthorization Act that says they're going to follow up with medical compliance.
Well, there it is. I mean, and this is one of the biggest issues here is what can they then do with that when there's another, let's say, virus? Now this subset of children, they are certainly at risk for it. And not only are they at risk for it, they're at risk for spreading it. So this subset of children and now adults and now older adults, they're the ones who are the most at risk among us and the most likely to spread. So mandatory quarantine. I mean, is that out of the question? Mandatory medical interventions, shots, gene altering. Like, should we alter their genes right away because they're a threat to society, even if there's not a presence of a new virus for the greater good? I mean, it doesn't take a huge leap to think about where this could go. And I don't want to be a doomer, right? Because this is what they say is like, oh, the doomers just say it's all bad, no good. Okay, is there some good in knowing about the presence of a gene? We are not talking about SNPs right now, people. We're not talking about the presence of the MTHFR, the presence of COMT or whatever it is. We are talking about whole genome sequencing, which is different.
And don't tell me I'm a doomer, because freedom is always one generation away from extinction. And y'all, this is one of those opportunities to protect freedom. So it's not about being a doomer. It's about wanting to protect and steward what we have for future generations. I mean, we get calls, and maybe you'll be like, oh, Leah, see, look, you are a doomer. But we get calls daily about medical kidnapping cases because parents are like, wait, I don't want to give my child chemotherapy. Wait, I don't want to give my child, I just got a divorce and I don't want the vaccinations for my kids, but me and my spouse disagree, or former spouse. And it's devastating to hear mothers wanting to use their discernment that cannot be measured and it being used against them. In a database like this, I just want to challenge you to look at what are the known benefits and what are the known risks for the solutions and the database. I mean, we've just talked about all of the risk with the uncertainty of the science, of the biotech solutions, of the privacy issues, and the benefit is knowing.
Right. Well, and knowing what? It's not... I'm going to beat this drum again because it's not knowing. It's being marketed as a near certainty, as a predictive measure of your future or your child's future health. And that couldn't be further from the truth. That is not knowing. You don't know. And if you have let's say the reference point that that there's intelligence in your body, and maybe even that you were intelligently designed, you don't even have to make that leap. But if there's intelligence in the body that is adapting to its environment, then what do our daily decisions even matter if it's all based off of your genes, and that regardless of what you do, that it's a certain outcome? Why even eat grass-fed, grass-finished meat? Why even eat your vegetables? Like, why even go exercise if it's all pre-written anyway?
And I mean, as for our house, and you can read about this in Reclaim Vitality, our book, but we see what the body is doing as a smart adaptation. So even the term gene mutation is something we could talk about for a while, because if this gene mutation is the body doing something smart at the right time, then why would we try to quote unquote fix that? And yes, we can look at scientific knowledge of a few disorders like Huntington's, Tay-Sachs, cystic fibrosis. Cystic fibrosis is not 100% penetrant or certain, but it is devastating. You can look at those very rare genetic disorders, but that small percent of the population does not justify every healthy newborn without clinical indication being wrapped into this process.
And listen, your family, you do you in this sense, right? Of like what you decide to do for your family. But when it's wrapped into this thing that kind of feels mandatory to have a hospital birth, as an example, that without informed consent, which is another aspect of this, without full informed consent on your options, or full informed consent on what genetics and epigenetics and penetrance and all that, that doesn't happen, because doctors and nurses and those who are even talking about genes on a regular basis, they don't understand this. They just don't. And because of that, how on earth are you ever going to get full informed consent? And also, who is going to coach you to talk about this with your children? And this is one of my primary concerns, is the conversation that mom, that dad has with that child, and then on the follow-up, how that child is then treated throughout the course of their lives.
Hope is the primary indicator of a good health outcome. So you say, okay, well, if genes are one of the least significant, or the presence of a gene is one of the least significant indicators of your health outcomes, what are the indicators? Yes, the nutrition, yes, the minerals, your environment, what you're exposed to, but hope is a primary indicator, and there's science to back it. And anyone, process or provider, that tries to take that hope from you, or that tries to tell you you have no options, I want to tell you to run from processes and providers that tell you there is no hope and no options. You do what you know to do. You take that healthy baby home, and you nurture the baby, and you breastfeed that baby, and you plan on things going well, because that's going to be the primary indicator if we want good outcomes for our children.
And if we want them to express the fullness of their genetic potential, because that is a conversation that is absent from this discussion typically, is the fullness of genetic potential, because it's not written in stone. It's not written in stone. The fullness of genetic potential. I think back of the University of California study that talked about and demonstrated that kindness changed your genetic expression. That literally kindness changed your genes. This group of researchers, they out of California, they looked at when you were kind to other people, when you were kind to yourself, and when you were not kind. And they looked at the genetic expression, and they looked at these inflammatory markers based off of this. And it was wild how these inflammatory markers that were predicted by genes, that they changed based off of how kind you were, primarily to other people, by the way, not just to yourself. Whether you were doing acts of kindness, that was the highest amount of change to their gene expression, was if they're kind to other people. Not just kind to themselves, not just saying nice things about themselves, but literally being kind intentionally to other people, literally change their genetic expression. So think about that. Is if kindness can do it, what does fear then on the other side do on the negative side?
So all I'm asking is that we make an intentional decision while whole genome sequencing is being piloted as a solution by our federal government, by the gene therapy industry directly, that we use our voice and say, you know what, the childhood vaccine schedule proceeded under a veil of darkness for decades, and we'll be damned if something like this proceeds under a veil of darkness without our intentional participation. And if we have the information as a public, then we can hopefully stop this from being integrated into a process for every healthy American newborn. But B, moms can make a decision that they're intentional about. Because I don't know about you, but the moms I'm hearing from today are asking for less medication, less diagnosis, less intervention, more natural, not to be ushered in and funneled into a biotech solutions that will create intervention from infancy.
Well, that's why they're scrambling. That's why the medical community is scrambling, is because they see that there is a mass exodus that is happening in healthcare right now. People are recognizing that healthcare, there's not a whole lot of health in the system, and more and more it's lacking care as well. And so there is a mass exodus, and trust me, they will scrap and get scrappy and claw, and they're going to do whatever it takes to keep people in the system, in this medical system. And so when we talk about, in Reclaim Vitality, we talk about exit conventional medicine. We capitalized M with intention. It's a capital M because there is a system out there that is algorithm based, that it requires more pharmaceuticals, that it's going to be more intervention. And there's more and more people who are non-interventionists and more people who are seeking natural. And they're not asking for more biotech. They're not asking for more gene-altering solutions. They're asking for, how can I live naturally? How can I reclaim my health? How can I ensure my baby's health and my kids' health? And how can we start to build new systems together? Because we don't want that. And so if that's the case, and people are literally in mass turning their backs and starting to position themselves to move in a different direction, then we have to then say, okay, what is that direction, and where are we going? And I want to say for certainty, where we are not going is back to big biotech, more drugs, more gene therapies, more fear-based narratives that force people into medical decisions. And I know people are moving away from that part.
And that's really the goal. If you're listening and you feel exhausted by, well, great, another thing to fight, another corrupt system, another thing to be aware of or be leery of or skeptical of, that's why it's important to understand the governance of your own health. Because once you understand it, like in Reclaim Vitality, we go through germ theory of we go through germ theory, genetics, we go through nutrition and toxicity in the home, all of that. Once you have a baseline and a reference point, it becomes no longer exhausting, because it's so easy to triage what lines up with my understanding and my plans and my philosophy for my own health and the health of the people that live in my household. And that's the goal, friends, is that we're no longer exhausted by these tricks, but that we are armed with certainty to support healing from the inside out. And I'm excited about it. I think that is the essence of freedom. So that's why we want to stop whole genome sequencing and newborn screening. Because if I'm free and you're free, then our kids will be free tomorrow.
Okay, what can they do? Where can they go?
Go to standforhealthfreedom.com. Take action. Click on Take Action. You'll see the Opposition to Newborn Screening Saves Lives Act there. Share this episode with a friend so that they aren't tricked, because one of the worst calls that we get is, I wish I would have known. And so if this doesn't just apply to this one nuanced issue and the ability we have to make a difference in it. That's huge, right? But it also applies to learning to hear and triage this type of information in a way that serves you, not that serves an agenda, not that serves an industry, but just growing that muscle of making the next decision for freedom and for health.
Yeah, this one is, I don't say a heavy topic. It's an important topic. And this is one that if you know a mom or somebody who is hoping to become one, this is one to get ahead of and not be reactive to. And so, listen, as we wrap up here, if you recognize intelligence in the body, and you recognize that you cut your leg and it heals, that you get a bruise and it's doing a good thing, and that inflammation when you have a swollen ankle after a sprain, that there's intelligence in the body, then it's got to be then recognized that there's something programmed in the body that's going to work and is working for you, not against you. And when you recognize that is a position of trust, but it's a position of honor. And when we honor the body, we respect the body, we start to make decisions that are in line with that. And you won't be tricked by the next whole genome sequencing or public health crisis.